This is our mentorship replay of Black Android, who is playing in Amumu jungle. And as it sort of loads up for us, let's look at as many details as we have access to. Match history. Okay, so as we open up the match history, let's go ahead and pull this. And even as you guys are sort of sitting here and watching this, you might come. Did the game start already? Let's pause the game and let us match history. Huzzah. Okay, so at this point, for our purposes, we're just going to look at the match history of Android, who is playing on Amumu. Ends game 5, 7, and 12. Player builds. It's weird that it's not actually showing the names. Player builds. It looks like for his purposes, and this is a normal game with Rock or Sand, he has attack damage, runes, and armor, which we know Amumu is an ability power champion. So that's something that I want to think of when we get a little bit further on. For the actual mastery tree and resolve, I think this looks pretty good overall. The conflict is usually Legendary Guardian versus Swiftness. But let's focus more so on the actual gameplay itself, because I think that's probably much more important for what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. So if we think about the matchup, first and foremost, it is a Xin Zhao versus an Amumu. Xin Zhao is a champion that will more than likely go for a Devourers versus an Amumu, who will probably get either Runic Echo or a Cinder Hulk. Unfortunately, Cinder Hulk is a little bit weak right now. So we see that on the blue side, Black Android decides to start on his blue side. So I imagine he'll start here, go for the blue buff, and we'll look at the ability that he seals first. He goes for Despair as opposed to Tantrum. I personally prefer Tantrum, but let's speed it up until the minions come through, and then we could figure out more so, less about the actual ability decisions, and more about what it is that we're going to do, whether it be gank the lane, or maybe we should farm a little bit more. Teemo with a really nice leash, still leashing. So in a perfect world, the Teemo would have left a long time ago so that you could smite, and we see that you are low here. You decide to start out with a Hunter's Talisman plus refillable potion. For our purposes, I would probably have already used one of the refillable potions just in case you get ganked. You have a little bit of reaction time. You seem to be doing fine overall. There's not much to be said about farming blue buff, but so far so good. You decided to continue moving on, sort of walking around waiting for your HP and your refillable potion to come through. And we see that you're going for the wolf camp, use a smite, and I assume you'll go back to base after this and pick up the next piece for your Runic Echo. You decided to go for Bandage Toss. If you really wanted to be super cool, you could use Bandage Toss right here and hit the big minion, or right here and you hit the big minion. But that's neither here nor there. Oh, you went for the cool play! I should have just kept watching. Who am I? There you go, getting relatively low, and you decide to back. Okay, so overall, Amumu, it makes sense to be a little bit more farm-centric. You're hanging out, but with a champion like Xin Zhao, with his early kit at level 3, he's able to make a gank happen. I'm sure your Lux is not pleased overall as to dying, so we have to find ways to make her happy, and that probably won't happen for a little bit of time. You go, itemization makes sense, so you go for a Hunter's Machete after your Hunter's Talisman, you buy a pink ward, everything seems to look and feel right. You're probably going to go up to your red buff, clear out that way, and then this is where the decision-making process starts, and we start to see how the different nuances of the game start to unfold a little bit more. You clear your red buff, you go ahead and smite it, that's overall fine. You go for the cool Bandage Toss over the wall, you hit the little one, which is okay. Big one would be preferable. At this point, we are seeing you come to the bot lane. So, you're going to the bot lane regardless, right? Just based on where you are positioned in the map, the options that you have at this point are go try to gank the bot lane, go to the mid lane, or go to the river here and get the scuttler. Not sure if you have an idea, say if the scuttler is there or not, but for our purposes, you go and you decide to go through the tribe rush. At this point, you start to ping. And so far so good. You would hope that the Jinx and the Thresh would play a little bit forward. It doesn't seem like they do. And the second you see them backing, you had an opportunity to engage. Instead, you're sort of waiting. And now, look at the amount of separation that is between you and the Thresh and Jinx combination. And this is, I don't want to use the word blame, but we can put the responsibility on 3 people, right? We can put the responsibility on the Amumu, which is you. Put the responsibility on the Jinx, and then we put the responsibility on the Thresh. So all 3 of those players have responsibility. We heard the Thresh hook this minion down here, which didn't seem like the best play overall. So maybe you're just trying to burn a couple of summoners here. You walk up, use a bandage toss, and we see it's sort of this double 80 carry lane. You're sticking around for a little bit, but we know that unless you have this miracle, you're probably just going to be leeching experience. Unless you're trying to tower dive, which at this point, if you were trying to tower dive, you would hope that the Thresh would take the first couple of hits, he would go up, auto attack the Ashe, and you guys would just sort of flash on top of her. But it just seems like you guys are sitting around. But again, look at the distance between yourself and the Jinx. Forget the Thresh. The Thresh isn't going to be able to provide that much damage, especially at level 3, and especially seeing as though he is far as well. Now what he could do is provide you with a lantern once it comes off cooldown. But you go up to this Ashe, you attack, the tower hits you, the Varus hits you, the mains are coming, and you're sort of forced off here. Fail flash, which happens to the best of us. And is he able to kill you? No, he is not. We see, yeah, half a minion for tower. We see you come back. All of a sudden, everyone's starting to run away. So overall, let's say you've wasted about 2 minutes in the bot lane. They have the double experience to you. They have the CS lead overall, you would think. And as we sort of continue on with the game, I just want to point out one team fight. And I have one idea as to the first thing you want to think about that might help you improve sort of your jungle ganks and your jungle presence. So at this point, we're just looking at the overall map objectives. There's really not much for you to contest at this point. If we look at the itemization, we see that Xin Zhao has a red smite, so he's the skirmishers. You're hanging out over here with our good pal, Toad McGee, and it looks as though you're going to be heading top lane after blue, or even before blue. So you're walking around, and at this point, what we're saying is that there's a ward. Now, I don't know if you've been informed that there's a ward over here, but there is. And you're about to walk through it. You're level 5, not level 6, which means that you can't actually, let's say, flash ultimate or hit the bandage and ultimate. So you decide to walk up, you're standing on a ward, and you are waiting. Now, 2 quick ideas. Idea 1, it is totally okay for you to wait. And it's especially okay for you to wait on a champion, like in your mid lane, that is a Lux, because if she does get counter-ganked by, let's say, a Xin Zhao from any direction, you are at least here to scare him off. Now, you probably won't be able to kill the Xin Zhao or even the Katarina, but you simply being there discourages them from doing it. It saves, hopefully, the Lux. But how long do you wait here? Sort of consideration number 2. And we're seeing, and we're going on about 30 seconds. You're checking your phone, you're making plans for dinner later on, and you're hanging out. So for nothing, and ahaha! Now, you have committed to what we call a counter gank. The problem with this counter gank is that by the time you're actually able to get to Lux, she will be dead, barring some sort of miraculous flash. Okay, so you came here at about 8, a little under 8, like 7:45. 8:30 comes, and you're like, you're sitting in the bushes. I'm just imagining Amumu. He's like, I can't wait for a real friend. Lux looks like a real friend. I'm going to protect her. And then you don't. And even if you wanted to, let's say even if you had vision of right here, and you knew that the Xin Zhao was coming, you still probably couldn't be able to save her, especially because you're not level 6. So you don't actually have your ultimate to get them in place. You have advantage toss to temporarily stun them. and then you move a little bit forward. Let's see what your decision making is. Past this, you go, you take the red buff, sort of brave choice. You're going to hit level 6, I imagine, off of the next creep wave, or I'm sorry, the next minion here, and you're going to go kill Poppy because you love Poppy. Actually, you're not even level 6, so all the time that was spent in the middle here and all the time that was spent at the bottom brush hasn't paid off for you. Poppy is relatively low, but she's inherently tanky, especially with her Steadfast Resolve. And we're going to go ahead and play this through, or I'm sorry, Steadfast Presence. And do you gank top? It seems like you are near top, and you go for sort of the hero play. Maybe hit the binding, maybe hit some sort of tantrum, but ultimately you wouldn't have been able to kill the Poppy. I'm not sure if you're keeping track of this in terms of Poppy's ultimate cooldown, if it's been used before. But again, if we back up a little bit, let's look at the distance between you and the Teemo by the time you start to fight. So here, you guys are relatively close. Teemo starts to back away, so Teemo's going one way, which I guess for the camera purposes, Teemo's going this way, and you start to go this way, and you can see the proxemic distance, right? The distance between people gets a little bit faster. You miss the coil. You probably should go back after the missed bandage toss, and you get stunned against the wall within tower range, and you're dead. So at this point, we're thinking about you're level 5 still. Xin Zhao has a level advantage on you. He has his Devour. You don't even have the ability up to this point to really make a meaningful impact because Amumu's real skill or real value comes when he's able to use his ultimate. So one of the things that we want to bring sort of point of focus to is that you have basically deprived the mid lane and yourself of this blue buff that's been sitting around for quite some time. And so let's take this part. We don't really need to see the later end of the game because I think we've identified enough sort of little areas for improvement before the 10-minute marker that we need to work on before we get to the latter end. So thing one is think about how much time you're spending camping a lane. We saw 2 examples already 9 minutes into the game where maybe you were spending a little bit too much time without having to reap a benefit. Example 1 is in bot lane, and example 2 is in mid lane, and neither of those actually ended in a kill for you. As a matter of fact, when you were mid lane, it ended in a kill for the other team because by the time you recognized, or that you two recognized that you could do something, it was a little bit too late. And so as a result of it, Lux dies, you go steal the red buff, cool stuff, you go try to tower dive a second time this game, try to tower dive, and you're unsuccessful. So those are sort of the first area is how is it that you use your time most effectively. It boils down to what abilities does a champion like Amumu have. Of course, you know, Curse of the Sad Mummy, your ultimate ability is really the biggest point at which you are very strong, and seeing as though you hit multiple people with that, you probably could have gotten blue, started farming a little bit more, got your Runic Echo or Cinder Hulk as it looks, but unfortunately you did not. So, BlackAndroid123, my favorite name of all time, I think there are a lot of areas for improvement, which is a good sign. And I think it really just boils down to you identifying how you should be investing your time, and for the purposes of a champion like Amumu, it's that time in the jungle, and that time counter-ganking, getting yourself to level 6 so that you can engage and be able to do a cool flash Curse of the Sad Mummy or something to that effect. But at this point, it looks as though you're spending more time sort of sitting in lane, hanging out, whereas you have other opportunities elsewhere. So that is what I have for you. I think I'll give you a 9.5 out of 10 just for creativity and ingenuity and a cool name. But there are definitely areas that we're going to talk about and we're going to improve on overall. I think